I just talked to the owner of Household Books here in College Hill, across from me. Great conversation. This is a space that just opened up a few months ago. It's a real shared community space. The owner was talking about how he had all different walks of life come in, even yesterday. Kids who were skateboarding, people who were doing work, having a community conversation. These kinds of shared third places are really critical to the vibrancy of our neighborhoods. And part of this was made possible. He got a grant from the city. It was kind of a gray box operation, and it made it white box, meaning helping to install some of the infrastructure. One of the things he noted is we can't have our regulations be easier for a lot of these big companies than it is the small businesses. So the small businesses often don't have 250,000 laying around. So how can we make the process of applying for a small business loan or even the approvals that they are needed easier for all of these small businesses to not just open, but then thrive? I love it. Yeah. And do you do books only, or do you do coffee too? Or
I do
can
books.
People bring in their coffee to sit?
Yeah, people bring in the coffee. In fact, yesterday there were, it's cool when that concept is demonstrated not just in the books or the language, but also through the people who are patroning the place. Yesterday, there was somebody from Cincy Co-op here. There were a bunch of kids from the grade school who were skateboarding, and there was somebody doing collage art all
I love it.
at the same time, and it didn't seem incongruous because a bookstore can do that.
Yeah.
There's Wi-Fi that's strong. There's records. There's ephemeral sections, which are for collaging and stuff like that. And then there's a great many used books. And I do poetry readings. I've done story times for kids twice last week. I do silent book clubs for teens and adults.
Love it. As you think about the city and this neighborhood in particular, are there things that you need, that you look across the community that I should be aware of?
Yeah, I appreciate the support that something as atypical as this has received from the city. I was the benefit of the tenant improvement grant program. That's how I was able to get this started.
Okay.
This most recent one. In terms of practically, I appreciate the question or the interest. I think one thing that has revealed itself to me, I didn't dream of proprietorship. I dreamt of like a headquarters at the end of the world where I could do cool stuff and share what I love with people, But one thing that's revealed itself to me over the course of being a small business owner is that this type of project takes a very specific type of support that delineates it from something like a CVS or a Radio Shack, and that, to use plain language, if you want things like this, there has to be two sets of rules for it. If that makes sense, you know what I'm saying?
And specific, like what kind of rules? I mean, I think part of the point is those are the outlets you mentioned are obviously chains, so they're probably churning out the same thing, whereas you're creating something very unique. You mean rules within the city and how we deal with it because your needs are unique, or what specific kind of rules?
When I started to get a white box space, most of the commercial real estates I was like agents and things like that I was dealing with were like, do you have $250,000 or don't you? I had one person jokingly say to me, like, this is the difference between you and a supercuts, is sometimes when other people are trying to do something new or entrepreneurial or outside of the box, they will come to me and ask, because I won best new store in Cincinnati in the City Beat 2024 poll, and like it is, people have taken to it. They're picking up on what I'm putting down. And whereas when I started, if someone had asked me, hey, I would like to try something like this, I think I would have given them a pretty standard set of advice, like understand your fixed expenses, and this is how you. Whereas now I would say, what type of liminal space can you find where you can put off paying rent for as long as possible? What type of, so some of those standard pieces of infrastructure by which business comes to a neighborhood seem to me to be older or designed for something that has corporate backing that can plug into that process in a way. And you can already see it in say Fern, for example, who's awesome and has been kind of doing that for a long time in College Hill, that intentional community-driven retail. They fill that parking lot multiple times a year with vendors, and there's like a real shared space element, and that happens, you know, the popularity of City Flea certainly springs to mind, but in breweries and thriving businesses all over, they are sharing their space to essentially offset the dangers of having to pursue the traditional avenues. And so I think, to answer your question, an understanding of why that gap is widening and how a community can support, subsidize, and strengthen the culture centers within it, even if they are, you know, like I think of myself as experiential with the option of transactionality, even if they are, you know, retail spaces, if they are non-traditional, then how do you create the underlying support so that they don't disappear as soon as they pop up because the ways to plug in are structured for more traditional.
And a lot of it seems like that 250,000, for example, like in the West End, we have this initiative where we're taking, you mentioned white box, we're taking gray box stores without any of the plumbing, anything, and making them white box so that business can go in there and they don't have to put in the plumbing and the HVAC and the electrical and all that. So you're at least creating the conditions for a business to come in that's small and doesn't have 250,000 to put up to, you know, to create that. So there's definitely something. There's something there. Awesome. This has been fantastic.